Now we're in business. Once people are up there. Okay. Okay. The meeting of the Lincoln Trustee of Trust Funds will now come to order. It is exactly 9 o'clock. I thank my colleagues for being here on this beautiful day in New Hampshire. I want to start right off with congratulating Chief Financial Officer Paul, who just won a primary election last week for state representative. Very proud of him. He's done a great job on this board. What a tough job that he inherited. And we wish him good luck in November.
Great. Thanks, Herb. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Is a tough election, and hopefully continue on to November. Thank you.
Great. Sounds good. Okay, let's do the minutes. And with the minutes from the 7/18/2024. Everybody's had a chance to look at them. Any questions on the minutes? I just want to say that Matt's doing a fantastic job with the minutes since he became secretary. Very concise, detailed, and to the point. And if you were not at this meeting, you're ready to go when you read these minutes. And that's the way minutes are supposed to be. There's supposed to be a history of what happened at that meeting. And we appreciate Matt doing that work. Okay, I'll call for a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Passed. Okay, and I will sign them and turn them into Jane when our meeting is over. And I'd like to just address, I've had some people ask me what happened to our meetings in the last few weeks. We did have some technical difficulties with voice and picture. And now we have Matt and Paul, who are very good at computer stuff, and they're right on top of this. And I think we're all set with this now, and I certainly appreciate their skills. That is not the skill that I have. And we appreciate that going on, so we can be out with answering questions from the public, and they'll know what we're up to here, and continuing to make the best money we can for the town. Next on the agenda, something that I added to it before we get into a client review. The Federal Reserve yesterday, there was talk about it going up to a quarter point, and I listened to a lot of economists on both sides of the aisle, and they seemed to all agree that a quarter point was, okay, let's give it let's go with it. Half a point, I think, my opinion, I'm not an economist, obviously. I think that was a mistake. I think it's very political. Election this close. I think a half was too much, and a lot of economists that I heard this morning were agreeing with me. So, and they're a lot smarter about this stuff than I am. And I just wanted this board to go on record. I'm going to ask both my colleagues what they think about it, and then we'll go on with our own client review. Paul, what's your view on this?
Well, I mean, regardless, it's a half point that was done by the Fed. We're still in phenomenal shape, probably better ever in the history of the trust fund as far as our returns. I think we should talk about maybe moving into some bonds, maybe even the S&P 500. We're still getting an amazing return. I don't know what's going to happen after the election. They've been talking about a rate decrease for over a year now. So, there's no way, I think we took the right action, not moving into bonds until it actually happened. And now that's happened, how fast are they going to pull out of there? We also have to look at, the reason why these cuts were like this. I mean, we came out of COVID. It had a lot of supply issues. It is definitely not a normal economic cycle. We have Bank of New Hampshire and their professionals to advise us. We are always listening to their advice, and they have advised that we move some money off the table, and I agree. We also need large operating funds for the town. That's not going to go away. I mean, I think
Never.
typically, I'm just talking off the top of my head. I think we typically going to use $500,000 that we have to use. That has to be a minimum has to be liquid. Now, how much we do and what about, I guess that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Okay. Matt?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what my colleagues have said here. Just a quick point on the Fed deciding to cut by 50 basis points. I do think that it was a premature decision. I think that, uh, we're trending right now towards 2.5% inflation, less housing and energy. And if we're cutting by 50 basis points, it seems to me to pose a real risk towards inflation. But that being said, 50 basis points is the cut. And now we have opportunities to structure the portfolio for the town into better securities and assets that might benefit us in the short, medium, and long term. So I also agree that corporate bonds, as recommended by the Bank of New Hampshire, might be a good decision, just pending our choice of what percentage to allocate to corporate bonds. So I'm very pro moving money into bonds or the S&P 500 as long as we have a limit on the percentage of the portfolio. And I think we can come to that limit fairly easily. But yes, I mean, 50 basis points is the decision. If we had to, or if I had to speculate on what the Fed is going to do next, I would probably expect a few more rate cuts. The size of those rate cuts is to be determined, but I do think that it gives us a nice position to, move some money into different securities that stabilize us while the Fed makes their decisions over the next year or two.
Thank you, gentlemen. I agree with everything my colleagues said. That's not something we should be commenting on because it does affect, obviously, money and transactions and things that we're working on. Okay, next thing we'll do, we'll move into this discussion about the client review that we got from the Bank of New Hampshire the last time. And I brought the copy with me so we can get into the areas where we think this money should be invested in. I know they were interested in really getting into it. And Paul had a great point that we've got to be careful to make sure if we need money for projects in this town, which could come up at any time, and God forbid anything emergency or something where we're going to need something immediately, we have to be very careful about that and make sure that we're covered. And I think that's very important. Now, any area that you gentlemen think we need to discuss and get into, because next month we've already got a meeting October 17th to approve for the room, and we're ready. And Bank of New Hampshire will be, and I'm sure they want us to come up with ideas and things that we think. Paul, is there anything you thought of right then? I'll call on Matt.
Well, I mean, I think I agree absolutely with what's said about percentages. And I think right now we're at ballparking here about 62% of cash equivalents. So that's approximately that's about 4.3 million. I mean, ballpark again. So I guess if we do decide to go into the bonds and the S&P 500, I know that S&P 500 is a little more controversial since we're in fixed funds, but and I'm just talking about the fixed funds. I think we're properly allocated in the other account. I'm just talking about the capital reserve fund. Well, that's a good point. I mean, let's not mix the two accounts. I think up to this point we've been talking about the capital reserve fund. The other fund we can discuss separately. So yeah, 62% cash equivalents, about $4.3 million. So I think that's the starting number, I guess.
And would you put it, Matt made a good point about making sure there's a cap on this. Where do you see that?
I think it depends on,
Where you comfortable, I should say.
sure.
See it.
I'm comfortable with a variety of amounts. I do think the most important part for the capital reserve account is some level of flexibility. And what I mean by saying that is not locking us into long-term corporate bonds necessarily.
5 years.
Potentially even 1 to 3, just because right now short-term bonds are yielding more or about the same as long-term bonds.
Okay.
So, you know, that will probably change at some point, but at least it gives us some flexibility of knowing that this money is locked up for 1 to 3 years, and then we can decide what to do with it as it matures. In regards to the percentage of what to invest, maybe we should start with discussing the S&P and acknowledging, because we're going to have to keep a certain amount in cash. And then we're talking about converting another percentage to fixed income, and then the last remainder will be S&P. So of the 4.3 million, do we know what our cash equivalents or our requirements need to be for cash equivalents beyond the regulations for the trust, meaning like, for the town's budget for the fiscal year, do we need to have a certain amount in cash, or are we comfortable investing almost all of this? I guess is maybe the starting point.
Good place to start. What do you think, Paul?
Well,
You comfortable
I
with
don't think
full-
there's absolutely no requirement to keep in anything liquid.
that's what I thought.
I mean, it's prudent, of course,
Yeah, of
to
course.
not go into an investment and then pull it back out, because
Right.
there would be
your
certainly
own throat, yeah.
potentially occurring some sort of loss.
Right.
So, I would, I would still say a cash equivalent of, at least $500,000. We can even go higher than that. And from what I've got, what Matt said, I mean, we can be, we can do this in a short, medium, and long terms on the bonds. But more specifically about the S&P 500, there are that's a really good topic, because when Bank of New Hampshire, there are rules as far as the again, I'm talking about the capital reserve fund, and there are rules about it being in fixed, less risky assets or investments, I should say. The rules are very vague on this, honestly. They did say, the Bank of New Hampshire said, their clients do invest in the S&P 500, the idea is that there's their net profit, I guess, at the end of the year. So I guess basically here we are in September. Okay, we've already made I don't know. We made a lot of money over probably again, maybe $150,000 already. So Bank of New Hampshire said, if we do go into this investment, we have to do it to such an amount that if there is a loss, that the money we've already made can cover what we're investing. So I would like to do this. Timing, of course, is critical, and we have to assume that the environment is such that it goes up. So it's something we need to talk about. Also, it wasn't really clear to me whether this is a 12-month rolling amount that we're going into for investment or a calendar year, that part wasn't clear to me. But it would be nice to.
I think it was mentioned.
Yeah, I don't think it was mentioned. I don't think I asked the
Matt, did
question
you
either.
hear that mentioned?
So
I don't
mentioned,
think it was mentioned at
no.
all, so that's a good point.
yeah, so I wouldn't mind deciding to invest into the S&P 500, and but cautiously, you know,
Oh, yeah.
and but I would like that vehicle as part of our portfolio.
That option.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think it would be a really great vehicle.
Yep.
And that's a good reminder on the potential losses needing to be paired by the overall portfolio. And maybe that gives us some direction on where to start, because if we land on a certain cash amount, then this is me speculating out loud, so I could be wrong, but if we land on a certain cash amount, and if that cash amount is higher than whatever we decide to put in the S&P 500, that cash amount should pair the estimated losses, right? As long as we, even if we think that the S&P is going to go down by 3 to 5% this year, maybe more, we can balance those losses with a certain amount of cash, I guess, if that makes any sense. So that might be a good place to start, with just setting the expected amount of cash that we want to keep on the sidelines. And then from there, what we want in the S&P, just as testing the waters for the portfolio, and then having a remaining amount that goes into corporate bonds, corporate or public bonds, if Bank of New Hampshire decides.
Yeah, and just jumping in there, I mean, and Bank New Hampshire can run these numbers for us. I mean,
Yes.
we don't
Yeah.
have to come up with that, but I think that strategy is exactly right.
Yeah.
Of balancing our cash equivalents against the S&P 500, and that rolling 12-month vice a calendar year, vice the fiscal year of the state. You know, it might go by that as well. You know, when we did our audits, I remember. They were for our MS9s at least, which is a requirement, you know, which is our third set of books that we keep. So we keep a set of books for the town, we keep a set of books for the bank, and the state keeps a set of books, you know.
Right.
And we used to keep 4 sets of books, but now we're down to 3. But
Gene wanted to do her own.
right. So, you know, those are 3 different periods of time. So it doesn't have to be an exact ratio between the cash equivalent and the SPI 500, but you know, I do like that idea and that ratio. I think that's very, very, very prudent. And we get those numbers from Bank of New Hampshire, and you know, I'd be comfortable with that as far as the S&P 500 outlook. I mean, and then the timing of it is a little funny because, I mean, then we get into the speculative part, and, you know, you don't want to be too speculative in my own investments. I mean, you certainly buy on a down day, which of course we'll do, and get 1% there. And some people say, you know, the election year, it runs up, and some people say, you know, the best time is on election day. That's when the market is lowest. So, I mean, there are these nuances, but overall, you know, for a 12-month period on average, I think the S&P return since 1929 between 10 and 12%. So, you know, we need to get our you have to have our investment enough time to earn, so it gets past the volatility and fluctations in the market. So I think that's an important thing as far as those windows of the 12-month rolling and the year.
Well, why don't we establish, we'll do it for a motion too, what we cap, what we want to keep for the town for emergencies or whatever comes up.
Right.
What figure you come to, what, 500,000, 600,000? I think we should have a, you know, policy that we enforce, you know, so the bank says, well, what's your, you know, our cap is, this has to be capped.
And again, I you know, while these interest rates are so still like crazy
Yep.
attractive.
Yep.
You know, even though it went, I think we were getting 5.2
Yep.
percent, and now it's probably what 4.7 or something. Uh,
7.6.
so you know, we can do you know even a multiple of what we actually need. You know,
Right.
it doesn't have. You know, I'm still very, very, very comfortable with the 4.6 or
Right.
whatever percent it is.
Right.
So I mean, but it would be nice to go ahead and lock some things.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think we
again,
should as a
like you said,
board.
it's political too. We don't know what's going to happen.
No.
And I haven't heard what the presidential candidate said about the drop in interest rates, or his policies. I mean, you know, he's talking about tax cuts for Medicare or no, I'm sorry, Social Security and taxes and overtime, and you know,
Tips.
you know, and I have no idea what that has on inflation. You know, I think it's good. You
Good
know,
for the average working
you know,
person, that's for
so
sure.
that might drive inflation down. Other
Right.
people might argue that, but you know, anyways, I don't know how fast these rates are going to go down. So, or if they even go down. You know, so
Well, are you
it's a crystal ball. But I'm
comfortable
comfortable with it with that ratio
Do we-
Matt talked about, and even being a multiple of those rates. And I don't think we need to go all in on the bonds quite yet.
No.
But,
Okay.
you know.
So you want to use the figure 5 or 600,000 a week? Cash?
Maybe I'm overly cautious. I might even go a little higher. I might just go to 1 million. And the reason being is that if as soon as we lock any amount of money into bonds, we really can't touch it. We you can, I mean, it's available. It's not like, I mean, those those securities can be traded or you can get, you know, whatever the market rate is, but we're going to go further into the hole, presumably, as those bonds wait to mature. So maybe I'm just overly cautious, but I think in my mind that, you know, $1 million in cash equivalents, whatever amount is put into the S&P 500, that should be technically, you know, not fully liquid, but close to it because we're not going to take a
Good point,
loss
good
on
point.
selling it. And then everything else we really can't touch. So
Right.
it's helpful to think in terms of, you know, the portfolio is over $6 million, but how much of it can we access today, next year, or the year after? And that kind of helps set a baseline. So that's my proposal is $1 million, but I'm open to a lesser amount if we think that that's really extreme.
Should we also, there's a sub note to this, should does this board have a policy about, we don't want, you just mentioned a few minutes ago about, you know, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years. Do we want a policy that we don't want anything beyond a year or two?
I think that is a really good idea.
I
Personally,
think it's a good, you know, you guys are making a lot of sense in the, not that you don't normally, but the last 5 minutes, you've really hit home runs here, left and right with me. I think that's something that should be we should have a motion and vote on that,
Well-
that we don't want to get involved in these 3 to 5 year thing. And I know a lot of times with bank, that's not the case. Over the years, they wanted to have longer investments. And I'm wondering if, like Matt said, I think 1 to 3 is. What do you think? I mean, just throwing this out. That's what we're
it
discussing.
may be a good idea. I will caveat that and say that it's
Alright.
dependent on the interest rate environment and market performance. So my enthusiasm in agreeing with you is based on the fact that I think our committee can only look so far out, or we can set certain investments in place, but as the market changes, it can be difficult for us to update those positions over time. You know, if we're investing in bonds that mature in a year or 2 years, it makes it a little bit easier to work with money that, you know, those coupons that are going to mature. But when you're talking 5 years out, it does make it harder. I'll just caveat it with it, you know, it's totally dependent upon interest rates and
Couldn't we
the
put that
market.
into, as part of the motion, that we want to 1 to 3, basing on economic issues at the time? We could add that onto it. Oh, what do you think?
I'm not sure we need to make a motion on it
Well,
per
it's about
se.
policy.
Yeah, I'm just not sure. Yeah, I mean, I think we're all in agreement. I don't think we need to make a written policy or anything like that.
Okay, well, I'm just,
I mean,
bank presents there, I'd like to say.
well, I mean, we definitely have to, be adamant, with what the bank recommends. I mean, I think it's easier for them managerial wise, not to, deal with us on these shorter term bonds and, quite honestly, they're, a lot of their, suggestions are, they have a bias in those suggestions. And I think when you're dealing with anyone, everyone's going to come with their biases to the table, but, they always aren't in the best interest of the town. So, as we've had, in the past, way past with, other banks who gave us no interest rates at all. So, I mean, we have to remember they're in the business for making money and making their lives easier,
Yeah,
not
exactly.
for us. So,
They have their own agenda.
right.
Exactly.
So, I mean,
Exactly.
and I think, the three of us, are in agreement with that. So I think we're fine.
Okay.
Because I only caution about, making these policies because, maybe I need to be more, exposed to it before I can let it,
Okay.
before I mean, I'm still like of the fact of us making a policy for like not investing in these, ESG funds, which, we haven't done any work on that, but at least we got out of those, politically,
Yeah.
biased
Yeah.
funds. As far as
Never comfortable with those.
as far as I know,
Never comfortable.
we still might be in one or two because
I
they
was
aren't
just gonna say that.
titled correctly.
Right.
So I still think, but anyways, as far as this, shorter term year or two bond, like Matt suggested,
Yep.
absolutely on board. These investments, don't have to happen, this day, this month, next month, the following month. We could, systematically step into them, and then, we won't get a hit, as far as when things fluctuate when you get into the market, that will smooth out, our exposure.
Really good point. You
Yep.
can absolutely set. So maybe bridging the gap between setting a policy and not. I think of it as the most important thing for Bank of New Hampshire, as far as what we can provide is drafting forward guidance. This is what we want. This is how we want it. This is our time frame. Please make this transition happen over the next, 3 to 6 months, right? And we want $1 million in cash. We want, just thinking through the 4.3 million that you brought up, maybe we want 2.5 to 3 million in bonds, corporate or public, not to exceed 2 years in maturity, 2 years in length, with maybe 50% of that being 1 year and 50% being 2 years. And then we would like to explore investing the remainder in the S&P 500, something to that effect, and making sure that the guidance is understood and giving them a little bit of flexibility to, you know, uh, invest in the way that, they think is best, because we don't want to be overbearing, but I think forward guidance would be very helpful. And while we're at it, maybe slip in another note about no ESG funds, because, it's
Yeah.
always nice to remind.
Yeah, we were never happy. I mean, that's something
Right,
we were
right.
never happy about.
Yeah.
Oh, I never was never happy. But as you said, they can get, what's the word? The backup, I guess, a little bit sometimes. And that's, we're, this board certainly is united in its thinking.
Mhm.
And that's great, because that was not always the case in the past. And we need to go forward with that stuff Paul just said and the stuff Matt just said 2 seconds ago. A little, going forward with what we're thinking. I mean, we're elected officials. We're supposed to be doing this in this board, and we're obviously doing it quite well. We do need to, lay what, how we want the road to come ahead. And, again, it's speculation. We've all said that. We don't know what's happening in November. We don't know. Is that going to affect things? Absolutely. I've sat here many times with banks talking about when the election was almost said, well, if this happens, this is going to happen. They said, well, no, this was other banks, not Bank of New Hampshire. Well, it will. If the House changes, the Senate changes, it's going to affect the economy of the country. Absolutely. And we have to think about that too with the money that we're investing. But, like what you guys are saying, it's excellent ideas. And we have to be prepared because I'm sure next month they're going to want to know, Donna will want to know how much you want to spend, and in all fairness, a lot of times, once Paul knows as the chief financial officer, then we can tell him, yeah, well, this town has requested this, and we get the papers. He writes out the check, I sign it, make sure it comes right over here immediately, which we've done many times. And that's part of that is our job, and I think we're doing the best we can. But again, it's a lot of we don't know. I think we're definitely on the right super highway as far as I'm concerned with the ideas being said today. You guys definitely have the backgrounds and you know what you're talking about, and thank God you're on the board. And that's my thinking. If you go ahead with some kind of if you don't want to have do a policy or a motion, that's fine. Or as Paul said, we're all on the same page, and we're perfectly capable of speaking our minds at meetings. Which is good.
And just, I was just not want to put in, I'm happy to do a motion.
Yeah.
To what Matt just summarized. I'm
Yeah.
absolutely happy. I'm just, when we make policy, it's just,
Yeah.
that's a bigger thing when something's written down,
Right.
and
Yeah.
That's something that we have not done, and we have to do it today, but I think down the line, especially with 2 new members, we should go through the guidelines and policies that we've approved. We took a lot of time with this as investment policies, the trustees of the trust funds. 2 pages, and we put a lot of time and effort into it. A lot of changes were done to it, with different members being on it. That's something we should in the future go over. I think it's fair for both of you, both my colleagues here, to go over this, and they may come up with something to add, which would be great.
And maybe one of our next working meetings, we can do something on that
Yeah.
ESG, and make that the focus of what we're doing.
I think it's great. You guys may come up with something great to add to this, or we might want to change. We have changed things in here too that were we didn't take with the wording we didn't like, so we changed it, and I think it's good. I mean, this was approved in 4/25/19, so it's been a while. But it's something to look at, and I think it covers a lot of areas and things that that we can do, and I think it's a good document. I mean, is it perfect? No. Could it be changed and make it better? Most likely. We certainly changed it several times and took out things that didn't.
And we could certainly update this. This was done in 2019.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with saying 2024,
Nope.
and so at least I'll remind, I mean, I hope Dr. Herbert Gardner runs again.
Oh, I will.
Good.
Oh, I will be
And
running
the
for both
continuity
trustees
there.
and for budget committee as well.
Right. And so
My term runs that way, so I get 2 at once.
yeah, but it would be nice to at least update the date on these things. So,
I agree. I agree.
So
And it's fair to Matt too. He may come up, he may see something here that, you know what, this isn't what it should be. We can make this way, and we can put in some of this stuff that we're talking about today that we're concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, the ESG absolutely belongs in there.
Yeah,
to be referenced in some fashion. Again, 30 state legislatures have declared this practice illegal. We found this practice in our own funds. We should follow the example of those 30 other states.
I agree.
Who said this practice is ungood.
30 states is a lot of states.
That's a lot. That's the majority of them.
That's not, that's not a couple of little
right.
protectors or something.
Right.
No, that's something we'll look into at the next time we have a work session. I thought we should do. We'll take a look at this, sit down, go over this policy, read it through, which we've done in the past. And like I said, I'm sure there's things we can add. What was said today, we can add. Maybe there's some other things we can remove. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, especially when we're talking about the S&P.
Yep.
And just one thing I wanted to revisit is Matt made a really excellent point.
Yep.
Although the S&P isn't quote unquote cash equivalent in this breakdown, it truly is a cash equivalent. You can get your money out the same day, and now they have the new, I think, T1 rule, so you get the money like the next day.
Yeah.
So one trading day after you
Right.
sell, it's
Right.
it's back in your account. So as opposed to these bonds, which is absolutely locked up.
Yeah.
It is locked tight.
They're handcuffed.
I mean, they're absolutely handcuffs, because you don't a lot of times you won't get your money
No.
until that matures, and the trading on those things is always like, it always, you can see from our portfolio, every last one of them's negative until we're truly locked in, so.
I agree. Well, that's something we will, next work session we have, and I would assume that would be either November, December, because we won't have another meeting with the bank after October till January. Then we'll have one after the town meeting to reorganize the board and everything. So that's what I'm thinking now.
Are you both comfortable with, for the October meeting, putting forward the guidance of $1 million in cash equivalents? And then that takes the 4.3 million, Paul, that you started with down to 3.3 million.
Right.
Doing 2.3 million of that in fixed income, corporate and public bonds, maturing from 1 to 2 years.
Right, that's important to have in there.
Ideally a 50-50 split, maybe, so we can start some laddering.
Mm-hmm.
And then asking for their assistance in getting the remainder put into the S&P 500 following local, state, and national regulations. So making sure that we can pair any losses, and then giving maybe a 3 to 6 month time horizon to stagger these assets as they see fit, with the final caveat of no ESG, which we've covered with them, but making sure it's crystal clear that it's not
out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have covered it, man. But it has met with some resistance as being kind.
Right. Yeah.
I think
It
that's a
wasn't,
kind
wasn't,
word, 'cause it was,
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
thank you for summarizing, Matt. That's absolutely perfect. And we should send, if you don't mind putting that down on paper.
Yep,
I mean,
I can
you're,
do that.
you're the brain box here.
Yep.
So that would be great. And we give them that guidance going forward.
Absolutely. You can, Matt, you and Matt can present that, financial officer. He's going to cover them. And then I just think it's good to just pave the road so they can see what we're talking about. And that's what we're supposed to be doing. And some of these bonds, like I said, I think it's 3 to 5 years. And we never liked that. I mean, I remember talking about it years ago that I'm not comfortable with these bonds that go so long. And I remember paying penalties to get rid of some we physically got rid of because we were just going to get, I mean, we're not getting anything with it. And it's better to pay the penalty, get the money and reinvest it. And we did that on some of the bonds because it was just to the point of ridiculous. Every time you look at the report, the figure is going the wrong way, and no, but it doesn't well, we're gonna have to close it out. The board can vote. There's times we have to have votes like that. We might not like them, but to keep having something that's losing money continually, and well, we gotta wait another year and no, we're not gonna wait another year and a half. That's nuts.
Yeah, I agree. And
you can't.
The only other comment I thought might be helpful is that the breakdown, which I'll definitely get on paper and send to both of you
Okay,
to
thank
put
you.
eyes on. The only other comment I had though, however, was that it seems like a decent starting point to build some flexibility for a longer term portfolio. I think as we addressed today, it's almost impossible for us to know what's going to happen, multiple years down the road. So if we can automate and build some flexibility into the portfolio naturally, where, if you have 1 year fixed income and 2 year fixed income that are auto renewing and, taking advantage of short term, medium term, and long term interest rates, you should be getting the benefit of, whatever happens at the Fed. Um, it's also building some diversity, or excuse me, diversifying your portfolio rather than diversity. And trying to understand, what, if short term isn't benefiting us, then long term will benefit us. So, anyways, this might be a good starting point, and then once Bank of New Hampshire has this fully allocated the way that we've described, we can figure out if we want to, tailor this any further. Um,
Yeah, I'm absolutely on board with that, Matt.
Yeah.
I think I think it's a fine, conservative,
Yep.
prudent, course of action.
Absolutely. I think you guys have wrapped it up. Couldn't have said it any better than that. And that's what we go forward with. And I think it makes it good common sense. I don't, we'll see what happens. We're a united group. We're not split. In the past, we had, both where we were splitting, and that doesn't look good to a bank coming in either. The board is not
Right.
even agreeing
Right.
with,
Right.
one is
Right.
this way and one's that way.
Right.
Right.
Caught in the middle.
Right.
And we don't, that's how when we had those good CDs, that's how we lost the CDs, because much as I tried to explain that the money we were making with them, especially the first one from Primary Bank, it just went, they just didn't understand it. Oh, because the bank wants us to get rid of them. I said, yeah, because they wanted that money. They didn't want us to do other things. And I disagree with that. If something comes up, and I'm always checking that too. And I'm not sure down the road we won't reach out to some of these things we did before and have them at least come in and do a presentation and see what's up. I'm comfortable with it. And it's very successful before. We just had members that didn't get it, and they were afraid that the bank didn't like it. Well, I'm sorry they felt like that, but we're here to make money, and if we can get a good deal, I don't see what you got to look forward. You can't. Everybody isn't going to be your friend. You're not going to please everybody with everything you do. But policy to make money, and this board certainly has made money for many years now, and that's what that's what we're talking about today. Obviously, I think it's the way to go, and I thank Matt and Paul for all their suggestions and ideas, and I think it's a successful area we're talking about and what we're going to proceed with. We'll be ready for October meeting, as I'm sure that Donna will say, what do you want us, all this money, what are we going to do with it? And as Paul said, we have been getting like 5% on the money, so it isn't like we're losing anything, but I think it's time we did something with it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I think it's time. I would think Matt would agree. Okay, you think that covers what?
I think that covered it. I mean, I would just say when we do our next working group, since we are exploring new ideas
Yep.
with the change in policy toward the ESG funds potentially and the S&P 500, I would also like to invite the maybe that's not the right word, but explore funds in the towns operating funds, and even though it's a different category. Even I've approached the school board very, very gently, and need to do it a little bit more. I've only talked to one member of the school board, but they have large operating funds, you know, millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars.
Right.
Certainly over 10. And I suspect that they aren't getting any money from it. It isn't invested in it isn't being
Sure.
placed in a
Yeah, I'm
money
sure it is.
market. So I think they're having quite a lot of money left on the table. So that's one thing I'd like to formally, whether that's going to the school board, which I can certainly do, or we can do United, or at least send over a letter or something, or and do the same with the board of selectmen, to make them aware of this availability, and making the best use of public funds. And as a board, as trustee, as a trust fund, we've been elected officials
Right.
in this fiduciary capacity,
Exactly.
and we have a proven track record.
Yeah. I would say.
So,
would say
you know,
we do.
I think, especially with the taxes being the highest they've ever been, is
No.
every year they've always been the highest they've ever been.
Right.
But you know, I think
Yeah.
we should definitely.
I don't-
I would suggest talking about it and going down that road a little bit further.
I completely agree.
I,
If there's benefits to be had from the operations of this committee for other areas of the town that aren't operating as, you know, as with the same benefits that we can provide, I don't see a reason why we shouldn't proceed exactly as you said. So
No,
that I
right.
completely
And
agree.
I think you just break off the account, you know, hey, this is the operating funds for this, is the operating fund that, and just, you know, whatever they're comfortable with, you know, whether that's just parking the money in a money market and getting 4.6% or whatever. I mean,
nothing wrong with
hey,
that.
that's better than that's a heck of a lot better than nothing, you know.
Exactly. Exactly. Just letting it, you know.
Because I mean, it's just a checking account. It's virtual. It's nothing to them, you know.
Yeah.
It will be totally transparent in their operations, except where they write the check from.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm comfortable with it. Obviously, Matt is, and Paul, but I agree. I don't see anything why we can't. I mean, if we can at least offer the idea.
Right.
I mean, I think
Right.
that's what you're saying.
I mean,
No.
you know, yeah, right. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be questions, and
Oh, absolutely.
you know, but
Well, we can give
you
the
know,
history of this and let them find fault with that.
but yeah, we can anticipate that, or present it to maybe the Bank of New Hampshire as well, and see how that those at least it doesn't hurt to go down the road to see how that would work
And
in
I'm sure they would
practice. You know.
welcome the business.
Oh, I'm sure they would.
I mean,
I'm sure they'll take our money.
I mean, when I first approached them, they had 5 representatives come the first time we started on this road, and they had a regional manager, they had the local guy, plus the regional, they had a vice president of corporate Philadelphia. I mean, they had, you know, they had very important people that came here, and they definitely were interested, and they found out what was going. And I'm the one that went to the local manager and I laid out what was going on, and he said, "Well, I'm not going to use the language, but he said, you definitely need to do something about this. This is outrageous. I mean, I don't know where this money is, but it's not, you know, doing what it should be doing for you." And then we went through the banks and got where we are today. And I think that's a good, you know, bring new people in like that. They need to hear that. So we're not talking out of a hat here. This board's got a history of what we've done. And apparently we've done some things right because the money is here. And we have the people now that work well together. I don't, you know, I don't see why that wouldn't be a good way to open it up and discuss everything. And if they're interested, great. If they're not, okay. But at least we presented it to them. As Matt said, you know, at least we're trying to help somebody. If we can do something with invest, instead of money just staying, you know, as you say, Paul, is just sitting there and a checking account or sitting in another account, you know, at least get into a money market, get something. So as you said, it isn't just money lying in a checking account. I mean, it makes sense. They can make money. And you said the bank will be very happy to take our money and invest it, I'm sure. And sums that up. Okay, anything else on this topic? Okay, do we have any old business? Well, that was all old business, getting ready for them to come in October 17th. Any new business? Any new things to discuss or bring up, or other than wishing Paul well in November, wish him that too in October. And yes, I'll be running for re-election. I know Paul had that question. I will be running for another 3-year term in March on both this and the budget committee. And I've enjoyed working on here. It's been times it's been frustrating, but now we're really on a roll. And I said we have the people, thank God. And I'm very thankful for Matt and Paul being on there because they have a lot of expertise to bring to town and to help us. And that's what we need, and elected officials, people that, you know, gung ho, they do what's right. And these gentlemen here, I couldn't ask for better, not only better friends, but better elected officials. And we're very thankful for them. At this point, then I will call for a motion for adjournment. Motion, second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? I would think not. All those in favor, by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, abstain. We're closed at 10, well, 8 minutes of 10 on our work session. Now we